With just 3 races remaining, NASCAR heads to Vice City. We get betting cards and DFS lineups locked for Homestead-Miami tonight here on the Backroad.
It's a non-points race, but it is a short race. Checkered flag. That's all this race is.
Welcome down the back road in between media's NASCAR DFS and gambling program. We are hot and enjoying every moment of what remains of the 2023 Cup Series season. Tonight, we preview Homestead-Miami, the 8th race of the NASCAR playoffs. I am Seth Woolcock, and tonight I am joined by another excellent NASCAR handicapper in the game. He's the host of the Angle of Pursuit podcast. He is Kyle Robert. Kyle, how you doing tonight? Thanks so much for joining us, man.
Doing great, Seth. I really appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to talk about this race. Very interesting race to handicap and try and figure out. So I'm excited to kick some ideas around for sure.
Heck yeah, man. I am as well. Miami's always a place where I don't think I could go to Miami. I don't think I'm fitting in there. I don't think I would vibe well, but it always seems like a great city, and it seems like this brings out the best in the Cup Series each and every year. Have you been to Homestead-Miami? Have you been to the Fort Lauderdale area at all?
No, I know we were just talking a little bit before. I definitely want to make a trip out to an East Coast race next year. I'm out on the West Coast. A lot of my trips and stuff kind of end out this way. I haven't been to Florida, but it does seem like an interesting race. It does seem like a place you want to get in, go to the race, probably get out before getting into too much trouble.
Yeah, man, a lot can happen down there in Florida for sure. But before we jump down to Homestead-Miami, we do have a race at Las Vegas to react to. Let's look in the rear view at what was a fun South Point 400 last weekend. So this race last weekend, Kyle, it wasn't gimmicky, it wasn't fluky, but I thought it was still a fun race, one that was dominated by the number 5 car, Kyle Larson. Despite some late race pressure from Christopher Bell, holy cow, if you were riding the favorite like we were last week, I was getting sweatier and sweatier as that race progressed, my friend.
Yeah, no, it was an incredible race. Obviously, Larson was dominant. I was waiting for that late caution, kind of like we saw in the spring. Yeah. Because I think if Bell had a chance with a late restart, it might have gotten really interesting. He was getting close, but Larson had enough of a lead build up that he eventually got where he needed to get.
Yeah, and shout out Kyle Larson, man. You could tell that win meant a lot to him. And there was so much data pointing towards Kyle Larson making that move and getting that victory for his team that sometimes you have to eat the chalk a little bit. And that's what we did last week. It paid off from a betting point of view, not so much in the DFS realm, but some surprises in this one as well, Kyle. Kyle Busch comes out, places 3rd out of the playoffs. Brad Keselowski leads 38 laps in this one. And old Ross Chastain saving face and showing up once again here down the stretch. What did you think of these surprises here in the top 5? And then we did have all the playoff drivers from there on finish towards 11, but bad days for guys like Chris Buescher who didn't get any stage points.
Yeah, I was a little optimistic on Ross because even with his struggles this season, it does seem like he's found a way to pop at the intermediates, at least be competitive. Brad K was everybody's fade this week. Everyone was targeting him in head-to-heads. I had a Chastain versus Keselowski, was feeling great about that after practice and qualifying. And of course, even with Ross getting a top 5, Brad K finds a way to get to 4th overall. I mean, it was an impressive race from Brad. He was able to just kind of hang around, get where he needed to get up in the top 10. And once he was up there, he was actually able to race with the leaders and was a lot more competitive than like almost everybody gave him credit for. So give him credit for that. And then KFB, he finds a way to show up at his home track from time to time. So yeah, Brad was definitely the shocker of the trio.
Yeah, and I think not having enough exposure to those guys in our fantasy lines really hurt me.
Yeah.
I was on Busher a lot heavier. I was fading Kyle Busch a little bit. As a show, we didn't like Brad. So, yeah, it was a lot of surprises, but Larson, he cashed a couple tickets for us, the outright, the top three. We had a couple specials over there on Caesars that we've been hitting as well. How are the betting cards for the Angle Pursuit brothers over there?
It was a little rough. Like I mentioned, it felt like everything we had, we were just a couple spots off, directionally accurate. So obviously,
Yeah,
Ross Chastain one spot behind Keselowski. I had Byron for a top 5. Of course, he finishes 7th.
yeah.
Had Bubba for a top 10. Of course, he finishes 12th. It was just a lot of stuff where it was like ever so close. A couple things
Mhm.
flip, and all of a sudden, it's an amazing week. But Vegas has been good to us. I had Byron the first time around, so have to take your lumps along the way for sure.
Absolutely. It's a long season for a reason. And Brian, who was actually out at the
Yeah.
race there in Las Vegas in the chat tonight. What's up, Brian? Saying young money was just that. Let's get it, man. All right. Well, Kyle, let's go ahead. Let's move forward. Let's look in the horizon at what's going to be a fun race down there in Homestead.
Hey, Michael, it was only 20% chance of rain. I think we got all 20.
Homestead is one of, I think, the fan favorites, if I'm being honest. I think there's just so much love out there for this track. It's becoming one we don't go to nearly as much as we should, or as early in the seasons I think we should. It's a 1.5 mile high tire wear intermediate track, famous for that high groove that you can get going if you're a guy like Tyler Reddick, if you're a guy like Kyle Larson here. So looking at this track from a statistical, from an analytical perspective here, Kyle, I'm looking at Darlington 1 and 2 and Auto Club as my direct comps, those high tire wear intermediates. I know a lot of people pulled Charlotte, Kansas, Texas, Vegas, these other intermediates, but I just thought that I really wanted to focus in on some of this higher tire wear races we've been to. And we were chatting a little bit earlier as well. Auto Club's a little bit fluky to factor into this as well.
Yeah, Auto Club, just like I was saying, it feels like it was 5 years ago at this point. It was so long ago, and the drivers that tended to pop there haven't been in the same form as we've seen of late. So
Yeah.
I understand why people are trying to get in a little more recency bias, especially intermediates, just to have an understanding of how fast have these guys been recently. As we kind of spin it forward, I do think you want to look at that. Like if someone's traditionally never good at high tire wear tracks, never good at Auto Club, they're probably someone you want to kind of fade away from a little bit. But it is a real quandary. I think Darlington definitely gives us a lot better information, especially with the second race being much more recent.
Got Alfred in the chat saying, what to do with Logano this week? Usually good at high tire wears. I hate to tell you, Alfred, but I might be having a fade of Logano later on in the show. We'll get to that in Parking Garage Props. A couple trends here to note, guys. Kyle Larson has won the last 2 eighth playoff races. It's Homestead and Kansas. Last year, he won it not even being in the playoffs anymore, which was impressive. And just 2 drivers, though, have won this track back-to-back. Old Smoke Stewart back in 99 and 2000, and Greg the Biff Biffle 04 to 06. The winning car comes from the front row just about 29% of the time, and then from the top 10, 71% of the time. So qualifying is going to matter here. We know these intermediates, it's really hard to get track position, so they're going to have to keep it going. And when it comes to the manufacturers here, it looks like Chevy and Toyota, they're kind of the ones I think we want to target tonight here, Kyle. 2 of the last 4 wins for Hendrick, 2022 and 2021, and then JGR in 2020 and 2019. Does that factor into your decisions at all as we put together our cards and lineups?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely from a big picture, I think I'm going to try and sneak in a couple Fords that I think may be interesting. But from the grand picture, yeah, definitely Hendrick guys, definitely JGR guys, and I think those people will be predominantly in our lineups for sure.
Okay, we got Stan in the chat saying with Larson locked in, look for Byron to get the best card known to humanity this week. We're going to talk a lot about William Byron tonight. I
Yeah.
promise you that, Stan. So stay tuned, brother. We appreciate you being here on your Thursday evening. And a little fun stat as well. Non-playoff drivers have won this 8th race of the playoffs 4 times at Texas and once at Homestead last year, being that one. Are you taking any shots on guys outside the playoffs, whether that's any type of market here, Kyle? Because I'm really not this week. I'm really trying to. There's one driver that I think, the race is named after. I think we have to take a shot at him somewhere. But other than that, I'm a little skeptic.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Harvick and kind of how to approach that, because it's a very interesting week for him. With obviously, there's going to be a lot of media, a lot of questions.
Yeah.
What he's going to his time is going to be accounted for. So when it gets to Sunday, is he going to have the energy and the enthusiasm to go out and really push it, or is it going to be more of a victory lap, kind of get around, finish the race, that kind of stuff? For the most part, I'm definitely prioritizing playoff drivers.
Okay.
That being said, there is a couple names, as we discuss, that I'm interested in, even though they're not sitting in the field of 8.
Okay, fair enough. Practice and qualifying going to be on Saturday morning, 9:05 Eastern time. Practice starts at 9:50 is going to be qualifying. So get your wake and bake in, pour yourself a mimosa, whatever you got to do, guys. Get ready because it's going to be really important to be tuned in here on Saturday morning. Stages coming in at lap 80, 166, and 267. We're going just about 400 miles around this son of a bitch. What do you say, man? Let's jump into the tire tiers and get a little more specific driver by driver.
Let's do it.
All right. Welcome to the Tire Tiers, your DFS rankings for the week. And I'll be honest, Kyle, we need to bounce back at this because last week we had Brad too low, we had Kyle Busch too low, we had Chris Bell too low. We were on Larson, but after that, we were just way too high on a lot of other drivers that we paid up for and didn't go well. So you think we can get back in the winning column here this week?
Yeah, I'm feeling it for sure. Let's rock.
All right, man. The 101 is to you. Who's going to be your anchor this week in the A tier?
I mean, I think there's one name only, Kyle Larson. We have to go back to him. This is a guy in 2021 in the round of 8, won the first race, goes out and wins the second race. Obviously, that was at Kansas at that time. But would it shock anybody if he goes out, dominates this race like we saw last week, and he's definitely the guy you need for to cash this week?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you, man. I'm trying to fit Larson in, and I think I'm also going to be trying to fit in Byron to all my lineups. I'm okay with going a little top heavy here. It burned me last week. I went, through a couple darts. They didn't pan out. Hashtag shout out BJ McLeod though. That guy's always like when I need a dart, BJ McLeod's there with a full pack of cigs. So I appreciate what he's doing. But William Byron, number 1 the total speed rankings at high tire wear since 2022. We know qualifying is going to be important. Well, William Byron was on the pole last year, number 3 in driver rating. Just didn't have that late run speed last year, but I think we see it now where it seems like he has all the late run speed. And I think this comment here from Stan, it also holds some value. I think Larson's going to be getting a lot of attention in that Hendrick garage. Your thoughts on the 24 and who else belongs in this A tier?
Yeah, I love the 24. Obviously, his pit crew has been incredible all year long. They've been among the best, the most consistent. And when you're getting down to these important races, when that final pit stop means so much, having that crew there and knowing that they can get it done, you're not stressed. You're not Tyler Reddick. You're not Ryan Blaney pulling in, worried that they're going to leave a wedge wrench or they're going to do something to throw off your race, as you've been amazing all day. Obviously, Byron has been incredible at the intermediates all year long, has wins at the intermediates. There's no reason to think he can't be dominant. I guess my question to you would be, if it's Larson and Byron running 1-2, does Larson get out of the way so Byron can get that win and lock himself in? Or is Larson going to be like, nah, this is my race, I'm going to win it, and you can figure out your stuff later, Byron?
Yeah, I think Larson, he's a competitor, man. And I
Yeah.
think it's so hard to, you can't win a lot of races in the Cup Series, and you got to win them when you can get them.
Yep.
I would not, doubt if these guys are running 1 and 2, like we had seen earlier this season at Vegas,
Yep.
like we had seen last week a little while as well. So yeah, I think Byron at the price of 10.5 compared to 11,000 for Hamlin. Reddick's a little bit more expensive. I'm fine with paying down a little bit for William Byron. I'm fine with anchoring some lineups with just him as well. If I
Yep.
do want to pivot off of Kyle Larson, who else, Kyle, who else belongs in this driver A tier?
I think Tyler Reddick absolutely belongs in there. If you told me one driver dominated the majority of the day, was arguably the best driver and was just dominating that high line, it's Tyler Reddick. So I think he absolutely belongs there. I'm going to try and squeeze him and one of the Hendrick boys into my lineups this week. I don't know how comfortable that's going to be, but I think getting at least one of them is going to be critical for finding a way to cash.
Okay. I think out of respect, we're going to put Denny Hamlin in these tiers as
Yeah.
well in the A's. And the thing with Denny Hamlin is I don't like his comps as much at these high tire wears this season. They're a little bit down from these other drivers we've already mentioned. However, top 10 on the last 5 ovals for him, average finish in his career of 9.8. This is a good track for him. He's won it before recently. One of those JGR wins were recently Hamlin. So he's a contender here. I just like him a little less, and we're seeing a little less consistency. For a while, man, it was just top 5, top 5, top 5 for Hamlin. Now those are more like top 10s, which in DFS, he's not burning us, still getting us about 50 points per race at these ovals.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I think he is probably like a top 3, top 5 car. I don't know that he's necessarily gonna win the
Yeah.
race, but if he is there and has an opportunity, he will absolutely do whatever it takes, even if it means pushing Kyle Larson out of the way to find a way to victory lane, as he wants to get to Phoenix and have a real shot at winning the championship, because he's been probably one of the 4 best cars for the majority of the season. So I'm 100% on board with you there.
Anyone else that you think belongs in this top tier, or do you want to drop down to the Bs?
So I want to see where you're at, because there's one name that I think some people would argue for. I'm not really sure I want to pound the table, and that's Martin Truex Jr.
Man, that was exactly my thought. I've been struggling all week with Martin Truex Jr. because you love what he did at Homestead last season, especially in a car and in a team that was not competitive for most of the season.
Yep.
He was brilliant. He's been brilliant at times at these other comp tracks, but just not to the consistency we need, especially at Darlington this last time around. It wasn't a good run for him. But if there's a time for Truex to step up, isn't it here at Homestead?
So I want to be excited about him, but his kind of late season finish, he just hasn't been the same driver. Darlington too, he was pretty slow.
Yeah.
Some of the, even like the Texas and kind of the late races, it just seems like he's really kind of more of a top 10 car, kind of like you were saying with Denny. I really want to put him in tier B, but
I'm with you.
Okay, yeah, but I wanted to see where you were at, because I feel like that might be the not the popular line of thinking this week.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to the price here for me, man. Like,
That's true.
I don't think I can pay 10,000 for Martin Truex when there's people in the low 9s, the high 8s that I feel more comfortable spending up on. So yeah, I like MTJ, but I do think he's a B for us this week.
Yep.
What about Brad Keselowski? Where does he fit into this picture? Because if there's 1 or 2 non-playoff guys that are getting a lot of buzz right now in the industry this week, it's Brad Keselowski and it's Ross Chastain. And these are 2 guys I'm a little mixed on, but I think Keselowski could be right there. And on DraftKings, 8,300, I think, is a brilliant price for him. He hasn't been knocked dead his entire career at this track. However, he was a top 5 car last season, like Truex, kind of out of nowhere. We didn't see a lot of speed from Brad and this team last year. However, Brad's been really good lately, man. Like average top 5 here, or excuse me, top 10 in last 6 non-super speedways ovals. So he's been consistent. Can you make the case for A, or is he a B for you, Kyle?
I think he's a B, but he's a very high level B. And I think, you were talking about non-playoff drivers that could be interesting, and Keselowski was one of the names that came to my mind. So very excited about him. Obviously, we saw what he could do last week. If he can get his car near the front, has a very good chance of staying there. RFK, just as a team in terms of total speed, has been much, much stronger this season. Obviously, Buescher's found a way to get to
Yeah.
victory lane. And you mentioned the price. The price makes so much of a difference, where I think Keselowski, if he was up in those 9Ks, I might be a little more hesitant to get there, thinking, maybe we saw his best effort last
Mhm.
week and this might be a little bit a step back. But I think given the price, given his upside and how much speed we've seen all season, he makes too much sense to kind of drop below a B.
Okay. All right. Anyone else you think belongs in this B tier as we keep getting our way through some high level non playoff drivers and the rest of the playoff drivers?
Yeah, so I have two names,
Yeah.
and we'll see where your head's at. You mentioned Ross Chastain. Even with some of the struggles and some of the inconsistency we've seen all year, Ross has looked much better at the intermediates, at the
Yep.
mile and a halves. Obviously, was really good at Auto Club, but the first 2/3 of the season, he looked like a potential Final Four driver. And then Mr. Hendrick had a conversation with him, and he just hasn't been the same guy since. But that being said, he's been really good. And you mentioned how important qualifying is. Chastain typically doesn't qualify well, but at intermediates, at mile and a halves, he's found a way to be in that top 10 and competing for a pole. And all of those things say he's probably somebody that we should be a little more excited about than maybe initial leans would kind of give us.
Yeah, it's one of those things with Ross. I think sometimes we forget how good he was,
Mhm.
not just at these tracks this season, but last year, second in this race. He's been second in the total speed rankings at all our high tire wear comps as well this season. So there's a lot to like about Ross here. Absolutely. I think he firmly belongs in the Bs. You had another driver as well you were interested in?
Yeah, Kyle Busch. He's the other one that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, really good at Auto Club, really good at high tire wear. It's also been an inconsistent year for him, as making the shift to RCR. We also saw Tyler Reddick was great in that car last year, and he was able to run really well. Obviously, he's much better at that high line, so maybe his ceiling's a little bit higher
Mhm.
even in that car. But I really like KFB this week. I think he can be a player. And intermediates, high tire wear, that all says Kyle Busch to me.
Okay. All right. I love it, man. I'm going to go a little contrarian here as well. I'm going to
Okay.
go with Kevin Harvick. I think he belongs in this B tier as well. Again, I don't think he's someone who's going to run away with this. I don't think we're going to get that storybook ending where he's
Yeah.
going to win, the race titled after him. However, tied for second in the average total speed rankings at comps this year as well. He's been brilliant this high tire wear tracks still. And then what did he do last year? Terrible car, still found a way to finish eighth. The top 10 rate for this guy at this track, it doesn't, it's video game numbers. 86% of the time he's
Yeah.
finishing inside the top 10 in the grid. That to me says right there, I think he needs to be in lineups here at the price of 8,100.
I 100% agree. Even like you said, even if his car isn't, pristine, even if it's not showing as much speed as we'd like, he's going to be smart about when to pit, how to keep his car in position, and not push it too much where it's going to end up with him, wrecking out and missing half the race. So I think that's a great call. And when you have a driver that maybe is a little more variant in terms
Mhm.
of upside and downside, he's a great person to pair with, because he can kind of give you that reliability, that steady, and at his price makes too much sense.
Okay. All right. Any playoff drivers you think belong in this B tier here towards the end of it?
Chris Bell. We've seen him at intermediates. We've seen him. I mean, last week he was really good. He's somebody that it can be a little frustrating because he has issues with the pits, or has it coming in too fast, or he just seems to have weird stuff in stage 3. But I think his upside is so exceptional that he's somebody that I don't know that I want to rank any lower.
Okay. I think Ryan Blaney probably right in this tier as
Yeah.
well. Mr. Consistent. He hasn't been burning your lineups really over the last couple months as long as we're on an oval. He's been
Yeah.
fine. 50 points last week. I think that's probably what he about gets you here. I think he probably gets you a couple, 6th, 8th place in the stages. I don't think he's going to go out and dominate this. I think he has a little bit of differential opportunity here. I don't think he's going to qualify particularly well. I'm not high on Fords, but if there is a Ford I have to back here outside of Keselowski this week, it's Blaney for me in the number 12 car.
I love where your head's at. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think we got a question about Joey Logano with him out of the playoff picture. I think Penske is able to put a lot more attention on the 12 and make sure it's where it needs to be. And Logano can give him some good advice. Obviously he won the Vegas race, so he was able to focus a lot more on Phoenix, but he still had to run this race, be in position, do the right thing. So he can provide some of that. And then Blaney's obviously been pretty good this year, obviously getting a win at Charlotte. So I like that call quite a bit.
All right. What do we do with Chris Buescher? We usually have him and Brad Keselowski almost back to back, but the last couple of weeks, I feel like we've kind of gotten fooled by one of them. We have one of them ranked too high, and they have been kind of variants lately. While a couple months ago, they were running almost like if one of them was running out front, two of them was running out front.
Yeah. I love Chris Buescher. I think it's been a great year for him, but I feel like some of the speed and some of the elite up, the top end upside is kind of fading away. So he's probably a tier below.
I agree.
But his teammate.
Yeah. Anyone else you want to squeeze in the B's before we fully drop down to the C's here? Because I think that about does it for me in the B's.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the case for a couple people, but I think because of their wide range of outcomes, it doesn't make sense to squeeze them into the B. They're probably more of a C, and we should probably move along.
Okay, all right. I want to shout out, get a little weird here as well. What about AJ Allmendinger? I think he belongs here, man. AJ Allmendinger has had some freaking speed lately, and when you look at what he did at this race last year, you have to squint. And you have to I swear to God, I thought I was dreaming when I was looking at these numbers for AJ Allmendinger. 5th in green flag speed, 3rd in the finishes. Yes, there was some late cautions that were kind of affecting that race, but AJ Allmendinger, he's been brilliant these last couple of months last couple of weeks for DFS. So I think he belongs here.
Yeah, it's been a weird season for AJ. There was a point, especially towards the as the playoffs kind of got going, where I was like, "Oh, Colleague's just running out of steam, and he's obviously not going to be in the ride next year, so he doesn't care." And he was just kind of being a back marker, but then obviously gets the win and has just shown a lot more speed over the past few weeks. So I love that call. I think he'll also be kind of contrarian. I don't think a lot of people will go to him. So I think that could be a good way to differentiate your lineups.
And what about Chase Elliott? Does he? I think he has to be the next driver we throw out. But man, has it been frustrating? Yeah. Last week we came in here and a lot of my lineups I'd already set Chase Elliott in there. Then he comes out on Saturday, terrible day for him, goes to the backup car, and was just never in it. Do we get something from him?
It's just kind of been the season from hell for Chase. I was thinking maybe he would be, obviously frustrated with how his season went, but he seemed to be gaining a little momentum, and then it seems to just kind of faded away. You probably have to, just because you could squint and see him winning this race and being like, wow, he was one of the best cars all day.
Yeah.
But he's also been incredibly frustrating. And even last week when he was like, oh, okay, you can, you're starting way in the back, so much opportunity to move forward, to make some noise. And he was just a non-factor from go. So you probably have to, but I don't feel great about it.
No, especially he has the differential advantage. He doesn't qualify well this season for whatever reason outside of road courses and short tracks. And he still is just, 40, 30 points a game is kind of what you're getting. So I think the upside is capped with Chase Elliott this week. Who else do you think Kyle belongs in this tier?
I think his teammate Alex Bowman.
Agreed.
Just being in the Hendrick vehicle obviously makes a difference. We talked about they've won this race the last 2 years.
Yep.
Being in the same garage as a Byron, as a Kyle Larson, who have been amazing at this track. Granted that a lot of the attention is going to those guys as they're in the playoffs, but Bowman has been pretty good, and he's actually gotten better as like the season's kind of come to an end. Obviously, he had his weird stuff and his injuries and missed a few races, but I think he's trying to get some momentum, trying to feel better about things. So when he goes into 2024, it's going to be a stronger season from go.
Yeah, I'm with you on the number 48. I've even been toying around with like an all Hendricks lineup if I could make that happen and then just punt the rest of my two positions here.
BJ McLeod will make that work for you.
Yeah, man. I love me some no BJ this week actually. Josh Balicki. So
No.
I won't ride Josh. However, I think the fade's gone on long enough. Throw Joey Logano up there. I'm not excited to play him though. Like I'm not excited to play Joey Logano this week. But last season at this track, 4th in the total speed rankings, finished 18th. And that's kind of what we've seen at these comp tracks this season as well. That's what scares me. At all the comp tracks for these high speed or high tire wear intermediate tracks, 15th is Joey Logano, kind of just in the middle. And that's kind of where we are right now in the tiers. So throw him on there, man. But averaging just 28 points per game this season, it's been disappointing.
Yeah, it's definitely been a frustrating year coming off of the championship season. We've seen some, kind of pops here and there, but for the most part, it's been kind of an underwhelming season, kind of across the board. So, yeah, I think that's definitely the right call.
All right, I almost think we drop down another tier here, unless you want to make the case for maybe a.
So
Bubba
the only other name that I would consider is Bubba Wallace, and I know traditionally high tire wear isn't his cup of tea, but he's been so much better at the 1.5s this year. Obviously, there was a lot of optimism about him last week at Vegas, and he burned a lot of people.
Yeah.
Does he do it again? Maybe, but maybe with lower expectations. He performs a little bit better. Obviously, he might be a little unique. I think he's probably there. I think he probably has a little bit higher of an upside than most of the other drivers that we'll get to after this tier. So I think by default, we kind of have to put him there.
Yeah, I'm totally cool with that. I want to crack open the D tier with Daniel Suarez, our amigo. And listen, man, tough week for him, kind of coming out of the gates last week as well, but comes out. And if you've played, I didn't have the nuts. Like I had Suarez in a couple lineups and I took him out coming on Sunday. Yes, he started in 36, finished 15th. So the differential points made up for it. And I was kind of, punching myself in the face for taking him out of all those lineups. 49 points for him on the day. And then looking at what he did at this track last season, finished in the top 10, late run speed, top 5. If we like Ross, I think we at least have to be mildly interested in Daniel Suarez at 7,500.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board. I played him in one lineup. I wish I had played him over in my chase rosters in the other lineups, but he was really good. Trackhouse as an organization has been finding much more speed, and I think he makes sense. And honestly, like if you wanted to use him over a Logano or a Bubba, I wouldn't fight anybody who wanted to kind of go that way.
Yeah, I'm there as well. I missed these comments in the chat, but Brian said Busher is gonna have a good week. Little disagreement maybe there between the co-hosts.
Yeah. Brian is the Chris Busher stan. I'm a little optimistic. Obviously, I hope he does, as I'm holding a future for him to win the Cup championship. But I'm not quite as optimistic as my co-host. But I do hear his little buzz in the back of my ear, just going, "Oh, maybe you should be a little more excited."
I feel you, man. Oh, geez, this got gross again.
It did. Let me ask you this:
Yeah.
Are you buying the Austin Dillon?
No,
I agree.
I get that. Like, this is a place Austin Dillon shows up when historically 11.6 average finish, but every time you try to back him at a historically good track form this season, you end up fucking burned, man. Like I lost a lot of lineups. I lost a lot of standing position a couple weeks ago trying to do this, and I'm just not going back to it. I think he belongs in the Fs where we've had him really most of the season. Probably one of the worst seasons I've seen from Austin Dillon in a long time. It's disappointing, especially with Kyle Busch in that garage.
Yeah, I was expecting a lot more from him in general. Obviously, we saw a little bit last year with Kyle Busch coming into town. I thought, okay, maybe this will be the difference maker that kind of helps him be more consistent.
Mhm.
If you like Austin Dillon, something like going to the betting card, adding a top 10, a top 5 at a big number could be fun. But what we need in DFS and just the very like he could get last place and wreck on lap 3, or he could win the race. Well, maybe not win the race, but
Yeah.
be near the front. Just I can't with Austin Dillon.
I'm good. I am good. Save me that. I think we can put Ricky Stenhouse maybe in the D's. I think he's a little mispriced at 6,700. Still averaging 30 points a game. It's not always, great roster in Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
Yeah.
And I think the upside is totally capped, but he does have 6 top 20s here in his 11 appearances. He feels safe to me in a sea of unsafe drivers at this point.
Yeah, as safe as a Recce Spinhouse can be.
Yeah.
He has been a lot more consistent this year, and has had runs of being a driver kind of running mid pack, which is not something we typically see from him. So that was really good to see. And I'm in agreement with you that he's probably a tier above the rest of these guys.
Ryan Preece, maybe I like him better than Austin Dillon. So he's an F to me, but maybe
Yeah.
he's a strong F.
Yeah.
Preece has not burnt you. He has not burnt you in a
No.
long, long time. And all positive points per game the last 5 weeks.
Yep.
Been very, very solid. So I think if you have to dip down in the 6,000 range, 6,100 for Preece, he's probably my go-to this week. I trust.
Yeah, I don't hate that call at all. I think he's fine. I don't think he'll, be the reason why you win a contest, but I also don't think he'll be the reason why your lineup goes to shit. So I think that's a perfect place for him. If there was another tier, he would kind of be between Austin Dillon and Ricky Stenhouse. So yeah, I think the way you have it is perfect.
So Alfred makes a great point in the chat. A guy we came out fading last week after really loving him for the last half of the season.
Yeah.
It's Eric Jones at 7,200. Can you make the case for Eric Jones to be a D tier driver? Because he showed up at Darlington a couple weeks ago and had some mad speed. Like there was a second that I think everyone was opening their sports books apps and they're like, holy shit, am I about to live bet Eric Jones? Because I think he could win this.
Yeah, no, Legacy is another one of those teams that seemed like they had kind of packed it in and they were all set for the rest of the year, and they found some speed, and Eric Jones has been really good. As Alfred mentions at high tire wear. I wouldn't be opposed to putting him on the D. I think there is a little bit of a gap between someone like a Ryan Preece or an Austin Dillon. I also think his ceiling is much higher than probably the rest of the drivers. So yeah, I think that makes total sense.
Yeah, he's just been a little bit hit or miss.
Mhm.
I also have to air some grievance this week. Fuck Chase Briscoe. Every time I get on board, I've gone on board with this guy like twice all season, but every time it's like, okay, the good times are coming back. Like I'm gonna ride the wave here. And god damn, it's just like Brian says Dylan is full of gold in the chat. That's how I feel about Chase Briscoe. This guy made it to the top 8 last year, and
Yeah.
just
Brian and I both had him on our betting card as a part of our season predictions to win the championship. We were very optimistic. I think his win total was 0.5. We both hammered the over.
Yeah.
We were optimistic. The one thing I will say about Chase Briscoe is the flat tracks is the place to target him, and pretty much all of SHR. So like next week would be really good for Chase Briscoe. Phoenix could be good for Chase Briscoe, but this week I have no interest. If there was a tier below F, that's where he would go.
Good point here from Brian saying, keep in mind Jones is losing 2 pit crew members this week. Yeah, great point there. And he's saying, don't even get me started on Briscoe. Talk about some of these other drivers we have left. Ty Gibbs, he's in JGR equipment, so I think he belongs in the D tier. But this is a kid, and I think it's just the product being a young driver in the Cup Series. They're not great at high tire wear tracks. They really never have been. So it's hard to get behind him when he has been great at this style of racing so far in his season.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. There's clearly a learning curve for some of these drivers as they kind of make the step up, and obviously he's shown flashes at times that he could be somebody that we're talking about as a playoff driver, a Final Four driver
Yeah.
down the road. But learning how to drive at high tire wear is definitely going to be on his short list of things to kind of figure out as he gets better. Maybe his talent and the car that he's in warrants maybe a D tier, but I think because of his issues at tire
Yeah.
wear and kind of where he's at, I wouldn't blame anybody who put him on the F tier. He's kind of, yeah, he might like right at the
Yeah.
beginning of F. He's
Yeah.
like an F plus plus. He's not quite at the D, but he's right there.
Yeah, man. It's sad to kind of see that for Ty Gibbs, but just not the style of track for him yet here. Anyone else that belongs on the board here for you, Kyle?
I kind of do this at intermediates. I think Harrison Burton is interesting.
Okay. Okay.
I find myself gravitating towards him. He seems to do a little bit better than I think people expect. Obviously, he's always ridiculously cheap, which makes him easy to fit in and easy to kind of mix in with other high priced drivers. And he won't kill you. So I kind of like leaning on him if we're gonna throw another driver up.
Okay. All right. I like that play. Honestly, I get bashed on this program a lot for my Harrison Burton love. And listen, he's won us more money than he's lost us this
Yeah.
year. So I'm totally good with that. Let's talk about another driver who making his comeback this week in the Cup Series. It's cool to see John Hunter Nemechek. I think he belongs at least in the F tier.
Yeah.
I think he's a gamer, man. And talk about a kid who like really looked himself in the mirror a couple years ago and said, "Hey, I'm going to go all the way down and make my way back up." And what an ascension it's been. It's
Yep.
almost been better this time around than it was the first time for sure. And I think he's gained a lot. And looking here at his Cup Series stats at Homestead, not that bad. Like not that bad, honestly. 23 is his average finish, best finish of 19th. So I think you could do worse than John Hunter Nemechek. We've seen Carson Hocevar be very competitive for both this team and your lineups this season.
Yeah, I think speed is going to be the ultimate thing for John Hunter. Hocevar's really been the only person that has been able to get good speed out of the 42.
Mhm.
If John Hunter is able to find that, I think he has better skills to remain there, to stay on the track all day, do all those things. I'm a little concerned that maybe he can't get the same speed that Carson gets. But in this tier with the other drivers, I think he very much belongs as somebody who is kind of sneaky, could be interesting, and if he performs well, could be a sign of good things to come for the future.
Brian saying Gibbs did well here last year, but that was in the 23.
Mhm.
One of the last drivers I'm kind of teetering back and forth with here is Eric Almirola. He's actually been better than you would think at these high
Yeah.
tire wears, 16th the last two races in the total speed rankings. So is there any love for Almirola? Can we get behind him here for the D's, or is he just an F fodder?
Yeah, he's a no-go for me. I
Okay.
like him kind of like Briscoe. I like him at, Daytona. I like him at flat tracks. I like him at Phoenix. But not this week. I can't do it, especially with kind of he's in a weird spot. He's not really got a ride next year. Might be in Xfinity. He might retire. Like um getting in, like, it's just too much for me to worry about when there's other options that I could easily get to in the same range.
I feel like you just tried to go into Eric Almirola's headspace, and it was not a pleasant experience, and you
No.
backed right out of there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you there. Um, k- I don't think I hate to leave Michael McDowell off the board, but he's been so bad at high
Yeah.
tire wear this season. I don't think I can rank him.
Yeah, his luster is gone. He was a guy that I was excited about and was kind of able to do more out of his car than even many people expected, and obviously won a race and had a good year. But yeah, he's running on fumes at this point. He would be really happy if the season would be over. So there's one
Yeah.
name that I want to throw out. Justin Haley, obviously
Yes. Thank you.
Dinger's teammate, colleague, has found more speed.
Yep.
If we're optimistic about Dinger's upside, Haley should probably at least be on the board.
Yes, I am with you. I'm with you there. That was the one driver I felt like that should be ranked because he's still that, that reliable dart throw every single
Yep.
week. Like no one wanted to play him at Vegas last week. Finished with 18 points. The week before at the Roval, 23. Average right now about 19.8 of a finish. So yeah, I think Justin Haley has a little bit of upside here for the price. I think we can just run through the rest of these. We'll give a quick sentence on each, but I don't think any of them deserve to be ranked at this point.
I agree. I think we did it.
All right, Austin Cindric, man. I mean, talk about another guy. He is 31st in the total speed rankings at high tire wear. Like that is behind guys like Todd Gilliland, Corey LaJoie. Like it's been terrible season for a guy Austin Cindric. Corey LaJoie, another driver. I think the lust just kind of ran off. Ran super good at Auto Club though, like
Yeah.
career day Auto Club. But that was a different lifetime ago. In the 15 this week, it's old JJ Yaley back in that car. Listen, JJ Yaley, I'm not making the case for him, but does not get you negatives very often on DraftKings. So if you can stomach him at the price of 5,100, I'm not doing it. But we already talked about Michael McDowell, Todd Gilliland. He's just a guy at this point. You don't want to be playing Todd Gilliland. The 51 of Ryan Newman. Shout out Ryan Newman, bro. I just love seeing him at the track. He just seems like such a fun character to be around.
Yeah, as long as your drivers and your bets aren't around him when he can have a chance to take them out of the race, I think he's fun to see. But yeah, Ryan Newman still doing his thing.
We had a little Ty Dillon love about a month ago down in Texas, and that was the only time I think we gave Ty Dillon any love this season. It'll
Yeah.
stay that way this week. And then old Josh Bilicki, he'll be behind the wheel for the number 78 this week. I'm loving all these last races we get with Live Fast. One of my favorite teams in the garage. I know they're not the most competitive, but man, they're just a cool startup and they're a cool story with Matt Tift and BJ and the boys. So shout out Live Fast, not in the ranks this week though.
Yep. 100%.
All right, let's go ahead. Let's shift to a betting perspective here in parking garage props. All right, parking garage props. We're going to start this by doing what we usually do, criticizing the books. What were your thoughts here on the books this week, Kyle? Because it was interesting. You don't wake up too often earlier in the week and someone's opening at plus 275 to win a Cup Series race.
Yeah, obviously there was a lot of optimism for Kyle Larson. It was somebody that, even a couple weeks ago seemed to be, there was already some chatter about how good he could be here. This would be a great spot for him to win a race, get on his Cup futures now because once we get to Homestead and he's, the out favorite, it's going to be super, his everything's going to be knocked down. Obviously he's like even money now to win the Cup. So that's pretty wild. It's a little frustrating that we have someone priced so aggressively and yet the kind of the names behind him are still priced like pretty aggressively in comparison. I thought, okay, well, if Larson's going to be so, at 3-1 that we could get a Reddick at maybe 7 or 7.5, at least, near open. And, now he's sitting at 5, Truex is in the same area.
Yeah.
And then you hit Denny. So it was a little shocking. And then obviously the top 10 market, they gave us some candy for about 2-3 weeks and then they took that away.
Yep, took it away quickly. And I will say, like, Rod and I kind of talked about it last week. I love what Caesars is doing over there. There's so much different stuff you can bet on, so many different new markets kind of coming into the fold, which just really cool to see that. So I thought there were some advantages we can take of the book here this week. But let's start in the outrights, man. Again, we are trying to hit the outright winner, but we're also trying to beat the markets with these as well and think about what could happen here between now and qualifying.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how we approach it on the angle of pursuit as well. We're trying to get ahead of things. Who could potentially qualify really well, and then when we regroup post practice and qualifying, and the odds come out, their number is significantly slashed. I think, if you're looking for somebody like that, the Watermelon Man makes a lot of sense. As I mentioned, not traditionally somebody who qualifies super well, but at intermediates has been much, much better. If he all of a sudden qualifies maybe, near the top 5, that 16, 18 that's sitting in market, maybe that's like 10, maybe that's 8, and you're getting ahead of things. So I think he could be interesting.
Yeah, I thought the number on Ross, honestly, opening where it did was pretty fair for a guy we've seen a lot of speed out of lately.
Yep.
I think there have been times also in the last few weeks, if you're a live better, you've considered adding that ticket there for Ross. 18-1 right now, still very fair deal. I don't know if that's what you guys picked him up for or not, but I do like Ross quite a bit at that number.
Yeah, no, I think that number makes sense. And like I said, if we regroup on Saturday, I think that number's significantly shorter. So getting some value is always the way to play it.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and back Kyle Larson's teammate, William Byron, here with my
Okay.
outright pick. And there's 2 angles I think we can take as bettors with this. One, you can just hammer the straight outright, 7.5-1 over on DraftKings, FanDuel, pretty much across the board. However, you can also go over to Caesars right now, and they've been throwing this prop out there a couple times this year. I haven't jumped on it, but I know Elliott has at times. And I don't think we've ever hit with it, but Byron to win this race and Verstappen to win the U.S. Grand Prix 10-1.
Yeah.
I think this is worth a half a unit play. I
Oh,
really
yeah.
do. Max Verstappen is minus 450 to win that race. Like, it seems like a slam dunk. I think he's won every race this season but one on the F1 circuit. So being able to get what seems like pretty certain 10-1 odds for Byron heading into this thing, it seems worth the play, especially now for a guy who qualified on the pole last year, Kyle.
Yeah, no, I love where your head's at. Verstappen obviously has been incredibly dominant. So if Larson was 10-1 in market, people would be lining up to bet him. Obviously, nothing is guaranteed, but
Yeah.
if you're putting him with somebody to win a race, Verstappen's pretty dang up there for one of the most easiest things to bank upon. So give me 10-1 with Kyle Larson. I mean, with William Byron, he has a really good chance to win the race. He's obviously been dominant in intermediates. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I just think you're betting on not just William Byron, but you're betting on his team. You're betting on Hendricks. You're betting on that pit crew. The number one driver in terms of wins, top 10s, and average finish this season. And he was great at Homestead last year, just didn't have the late run speed. So I'm expecting to see more of that out of the guy who won Darlington 1, 4th at Darlington 2. He's been good at the comps. Fire me up some William Byron this week. That's who I'm really only backing at this point in the outrights. Is there any other outrights that you're down on right now or keeping an eye on?
No, I think that's the one, because obviously, like you said, especially if he can put it on pole, he gets that prime pit position, and then his team can
gonna be
do
hard
what
to beat
they
him.
need to do, and that could be just enough to kind of get there. And like we said, if Larson and him are right there, maybe Larson gives them a half an inch rather than wrecking, because he can get second or third. I think Tyler Reddick would be the only other name that it's on my short list, just because of how good he is on that high line. And I think if he can run it, I think he can put himself in position to have a really, really big day. And I know his price is short, but he's basically double Larson, and I don't think he's that far behind him.
Yeah. I've heard it a couple times this week. If you think Reddick's gonna run that high line, you got to think that Larson's gonna run it as well, and that's where I struggle. I worry that if something happens this week, if there is a big wreck between some of these heavy favorites, I think it could be these guys who are riding that high line like Reddick. So it's a risky pick, but I totally understand it, and there's a solid chance that he's 6-1 for a reason, that he's sitting in victory lane come Sunday night. Let's go to placement props here, Kyle.
Okay.
And I thought there was an interesting one over at Caesars. It's a little bit of a risky one as well, but both William Byron and Kyle Larson to finish top 3. This is 6-1. This is kind of hedging myself a little bit in case Larson does end up winning this thing. And I think we talked about it earlier. Like, would we be surprised if these guys are winning or first and second during this race? I would not be. We've already talked at length about William Byron, and Kyle Larson dominated this race last season, 199 laps led, 150 driver rating, by far one of the best driver ratings we saw all last season, average position of 1.4. It's fucking nuts. Like, Last week I thought was the first time all year I was comfortable laying a 4.5 to 1 because the data was so in Larson's favor. It's
Yeah.
even more in favor this week than I think any time. I just can't take that juice, so I'm going to go 6 to 1 here as a little bit of a leverage option.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and we've seen it at at mile and a halfs. Those two can run simultaneously. They'll both be right there. Byron hasn't been quite as strong over the past couple
Yes.
races, but I think this is a big spot for him. I think he is definitely a Final Four contender and would not be shocked if he's, 1 or 2 at the end of the day. So I think that's a great way to play it, to find a little way. I've been trying to, because I'm with you. Larson is the guy. It's just a matter of how you get exposure to that.
Yes.
And I think that's a great way to do it.
All right. Anything else in the placement props that you're digging on?
Some of these lines have moved a little bit. But Kyle Busch is still minus 120 to top 10.
Yes.
That feels like nothing is free, especially in NASCAR where we have wheels falling off and people and Ryan Newman in the field and all that good stuff. But he's just been money all of his career. He's great at Auto Club. This is just a spot, and if you can still get that like minus 120, minus 130 price, I think it's a really good fire. Obviously, DraftKings is almost up to minus 190 right now,
Ooh.
so don't want any part of that. But I think that makes sense. And Brad K is right there too, minus 130 to top 10. We talked about how much we like him and what he could do, and maybe he doesn't win the race, but I think he'll be right in the conversation all day. Top 5 could be interesting too, but that top 10 minus 130, that feels really safe, and you're not paying extreme juice to get it.
I think a note here on the Kyle Busch top 10 number you gave out. I sometimes like when I'm seeing these variances between books, because sometimes it should, like, if he's 190 on one, like, it feels like there's a good chance that's going to hit, and then you're getting him from 120 over on Caesars. I really like that call out there. And I want to throw one out for Brad Keselowski on you, because I've been hot on Brad a little bit this week. I just didn't know how to take him. And how about a Denny and Brad parlay top 10 plus 140 over at Caesars? We've talked pretty much about Brad quite a bit on this show. Top 5 in the total speed rankings here last season, finished fifth in driver rating, and great form. Top 10 on the last 6 non-super speedway ovals. And Denny Hamlin, same deal. Top 10 on 5 of his last ovals. Great average finish here. Didn't have the best car a year ago at this track, still finished 7th. So I think there's a lot to like at plus 140, though. Can you pay that for 2 drivers to get in the top 10? That was the question I had to make, and ultimately I decided yes.
I think it's, a little short for what we would probably deserve, but given the 2 drivers and how safe relatively that I think they both are, I think it's probably a good way. And if you don't want to lay the heavy juice, especially with Denny, I think that's a good way to get exposure to both drivers, have a really good chance. Cause I think they both have top 5 upside.
Yeah.
Denny probably has top 3 upside. So just to have them get in the top 10, that feels really, really good.
Cool. Anything else here in placement props, or do you want to move forward to matchups?
Let's go to matchups.
Okay. All right. What are you feeling over there? I will say shout out to the books again in the matchups and head-to-heads and group department, because this was something a couple weeks ago. We were just getting all the playoff drivers. We weren't getting anything fresh and fun. And I feel like now there's a lot out there.
Yeah, I mean, even last week I was able to get I think Harrison Burton versus Justin Haley. So that was nice to see. I will say, if you're betting over on Caesars, be careful, because they kind of do like qualifying and then a race head to head and then a stage 2. Like they mix things in. So really give that like a, hey, make sure that makes sense before you move along. So the one I like the most, and I'm pretty surprised it's priced the way it is. Maybe I'll end up looking at it like a dummy, but Tyler Reddick is plus money versus Martin Truex Jr. We both talked about our hesitation against him. Yeah, he's plus 105 right now in Caesars for the race, where Truex is minus 135. We both talked about our hesitation for Truex. We talked about, kind of his rough kind of close to the season. Obviously, Reddick, I'm a big Reddick stan this week. I think he could punch his ticket and get into the round of 4 this weekend. And if I don't necessarily want to go to the outright market, a head to head versus a guy that I think he's just better than, and if he can run that top line, be a top 3 car all day, I think he cashes that head to head and getting plus money to do it. So I'm all aboard.
Okay. All right. And we got a DGen matchup here in the chat. Austin Dillon plus 190 over Elliott on MGM. I think it'll hit. Oh man, Stan, you got some big balls, my friend, to be throwing that out. Listen, I get Chase Elliott hasn't been great here, and
If
Austin
you're gonna
Dillon,
bet Austin Dillon, you want to get paid out, and almost 2-1 to beat Chase Elliott, I don't think it's a bad bet. Obviously, you just need Dillon to stay on the track long enough and to stay right in front of Chase. So if Chase has an issue or is out of the race for some reason, has a tire blow, Austin Dillon will do just enough, because I don't think he's going to be like a top 10 car.
yeah.
But if you want to get exposure to him, I think that's an interesting way, and you're getting paid out on it. So I don't hate where he's coming from.
Good shout out, Stan. Appreciate that, man. Stan always has, I feel like he's always coming in here some interesting angles in the live comments or in the comments after the show as well. All right. I'm going to go with mine here, and it's the number 4 car. I'm laying the juice on Kevin Harvick, minus 135 over Joey Logano at DraftKings. And what would I be if I didn't back my Busch Light brother? Tied for second in the average total speed rankings at comps this year. He's been brilliant. If there's high tire wear at a track, you got to bet Kevin Harvick. You have to have some exposure to him. Number 1 among actives in average finish here, 7.3. That doesn't feel like a real stat. 86% top 10 rate doesn't feel like a real stat. I'm backing him this week over Logano, who 4th in the total speed rankings last year we talked about, but finished 18th. And just terrible at these high tire wear comps this season. 17th among the field at all of them. Terrible at the Darlingtons. I have no faith that Logano can get a top 10 here. And I think Harvick has top 5 upside.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I feel really good. Even as you mentioned, you have to lay a little juice. It's probably still worth it. And with Logano not in the playoffs, I think it's a different animal. And with so much of the Penske garage attention going to Blaney,
yeah,
it's just everything kind of lines up for him to just be like 23rd and kind of doing his thing. And I think Brad K can be a top 5 car. So I think that makes sense.
All right. Anything else here for you in matchups or groups, or do you want to head to specials and close it out?
Let's head to specials, because there's nothing, at least at this point, that I feel great about.
Okay. All right. Specials, what do you got for us?
Let's take a gander. So, I mean, I've talked about Tyler Reddick all week. I feel like a broken record at this point, but Tyler Reddick as your top Toyota feels pretty nice. You can get it at plus 250 at Caesars. I'm big on him. Obviously, I took him over Truex. Truex is currently the favorite. Denny would be would be the one that scares me. Denny's plus 280. So if you're optimistic on Denny this week and you think, he's a top 3, top 5 car, and you don't necessarily want to get to that market, you could bet him the top Toyota, because he could get 4th there, and you're getting paid out pretty well. So I think Denny could make some sense, but I think Reddick's going to be a contender for this race. I think he has a chance to beat Larson. So if I'm getting plus 250 to beat all the Toyotas, I like that a lot.
Yeah, I haven't bet any Reddick this entire week, and that might be a way I get exposed to him. I tried to go to the top Toyota market last week with Denny. Didn't pay off because Chris Bell had a great run, but I think there's always a lot of profitability in that market when you're only dealing with a handful of cars like we have with Toyota. So I like that call out there from you. I'm going to go with Chevy to win plus 105. It's still barely plus money. This has been going down all week. It was plus 120 earlier. I think when it opened, could have even been a little bit higher than that. We've talked it just ad nauseum tonight on William Byron, Kyle Larson, that these are kind of the guys who we are expecting to win this race. And if not, we talked about guys like Rowdy. We've talked about the Ross Chastains of the world, the Chase Elliott's, who could mix it up a little bit. I think really, if you're taking this bet, you're betting on Byron or Larson, and if it's not them, it's Rowdy or the Watermelon Man.
Yeah. Yeah, I love where your head's at. And honestly, if you are big into, it's most likely going to be Larson or Byron. Going with Team Hendrick to win the race might be another way. I've seen some books that have that at like plus 120, plus 150. So shop it around. If you
Yeah.
find a better number there and you like that, because then you're still getting exposure to Chase, which, we both don't think he's gonna have a great race, but if he has a great race, could win it. Would it shock you if Alex Bowman found a way to get to victory lane?
He
Probably not
always finds
expecting it,
Yeah.
but is Chase Elliott, is Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman that different from like a Chastain or a Kyle Busch? I don't really think so, at least at this point. So if you can get a plus 120, plus 150 to basically target the same two drivers, I think that could make sense as well.
Awesome. Anything else, Kyle, that we haven't covered tonight? Any final bets? Any final advice for the IBT family out there?
Yeah, so my one question is, top Ford is really interesting to me because I think majority of the Fords are basically non-existent in terms of top 5, ability, win the race ability.
Yep.
So we're talking about Chris Buescher, who is somehow the favorite despite nobody wanting to bet him. Brad K is plus 225, co-favorite. I like that a lot. Ryan Blaney plus 260. And if you want to get real wild, Kevin Harvick in his final race at Homestead plus 475. I think there's opportunity in that market to get down. And maybe you take, you could even take 2 of them, because it really feels like either the RFK boys or probably Blaney or Harvick are kind of the only ones that you should really even consider. And Harvick, like, for the story would be great, but it wouldn't shock you if he's like 9th or 12th or something and, kind of finishes there and there's a Ford in front of him. No, I don't think so. So, if you want to get exposure to some of these drivers, but you're like, you know what, Kyle Larson and Hendrick is going to dominate all day, that's a great way to find some exposure.
All right, man. I love it. Little love for the ponies. We haven't given them much love on the show, so I appreciate that. Kyle, and I appreciate you for joining us tonight, man. You brought so much great insight and so much high vibes and energy to the show tonight. Tell us where we can find you and best support you and Brian over there at the Angle Pursuit podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. This has been a blast. So yeah, we're the Angle of Pursuit. The best place to come hang out is on YouTube. We do 2 shows a week. Usually on Wednesdays or we record Wednesdays. Will be in your feed on Thursday, and then Brian and I will regroup after practice and qualifying to get you set for Sunday's race. Talk a lot more DraftKings at that point. At Notorious KRO on Twitter is a great way to follow me. I'm happy to chat about anything NASCAR there. And follow Brian at Brian_Twining. He's my co-host. Super knowledgeable guy and has a lot of good insights as well.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you, Kyle, Stan, Brian, Alfred, everyone riding in the chat tonight. Thank you guys so much. Open up a new tab here on YouTube. Make sure you're checking out the Angle Pursuit podcast here on YouTube. They got great content. Good to just see so many awesome creators who are good people at the end of the day doing this for the right reasons. So thank you, Kyle. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll be back next weekend. We only got a couple weeks left, so let's enjoy it while we have it. And we'll catch you down next time here on the Backroad.